and welcome to Health Matters on Channels Television. Thank you for joining us. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. Allergies occur when the immune system reacts to a foreign substance such as pollen, the venom from bee stings, or pet dander. It could also be a reaction to food that doesn't cause a reaction in most people. The immune system produces antibodies when allergies occur, which identify a particular allergen as harmful, even though it isn't. The European Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology estimates that 25 to 30% of the world's population is affected by allergic and hypersensitivity conditions. Allergies represent the fourth most common chronic disease category in the world. My guest is consultant family physician and vice president of Medical Initiative Africa, Dr. Agbo Ebuta. He joins us from our Abuja studio. You're welcome to the show, sir. So if you can hear me, essentially,
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So this is a substance that isn't really harmful, but the body mechanism just interprets it as so. Why is that?
Well, just to take it back a bit, if to contextualize it a little further and deepen the understanding before we try to attempt to explain it, if Nigeria was a body and we had the army, members of the armed forces as our immune system defending the territorial integrity of Nigeria, and we had some invasion by the Cameroonian army, the gendarmes who crossed the border. So the Nigerian army will attack the gendarmes, and that would be a proper reaction. It would be an attempt to knock off these foreign interlopers. But if, for example, the ambassador, the Cameroonian ambassador to Nigeria were to wave a white flag and visit Nigeria, and the Nigerian army were to attack him, that would not be proper. So the body reacts to foreign substances that it shouldn't be reacting to. And there have been several explanations on why these occur. The exact reason in multiple situations are not clearly categorized and properly established. However, the factors are mainly because some people inherit those predispositions while other people acquire those tendencies. In terms of inheriting those predispositions, what happens is that the immune system of the person affected is programmed in such a manner that there are certain chemicals that are present in the environment that when those chemicals would come in or find their way, either by maybe ingestion, that is by swallowing, either by inhalation, that is into the airway, or either by direct contact with the skin, so to speak, or any other form of contact, even by injecting through the vessels, the body would sense that these organisms are foreign, and the members of the immune system, which are critical, which will essentially be the lymphocytes in this case, would produce certain chemicals to knock off these foreign bodies and neutralize them in an attempt to protect the body. Even if these foreign bodies are inert, so to speak, they try to knock them off. So that has to do with the programming of the immune system. Now, that programming of the immune system can happen at several. It can happen in utero before the child is born, but usually within the first few months of life, upon delivery, when the child is exposed to multiple stimulus from the environment, there appears to be an immunological reprogramming of the immune system. So the immune system at that point in time encounters multiple allergens, that is stimulants, and in encountering them, is adjusted to recognize them. Most times, most of those stimulants are recognized as inert, meaning that in future, when the person is exposed, the person would not respond. But a small number of them, for multiple reasons, will be recognized as foreign. Eating things as little as granules, strawberries, dust mites, perfumes, smoke, and the rest. would tend to stimulate the immune system. So definitely there's a hereditary component where people inherit that tendency through their family lines, and then there's an environmental component where due to a failure of exposure at a critical time in development, they are unable to establish the capacity to recognize some of these foreign bodies as neutral, harmless, and inert.
Okay, so there is a place for exposure. But before we go to that, what do the symptoms look like?
Well, the symptoms would depend on the part of the body affected. So if it is the eye, it will be inflammation, symptoms of inflammation in the eye. So what we typically see in the clinic, and what I've seen in the last couple of weeks, is that people come in with itchy eyes. If it's the nose, it will be itchy nose. If it is the airway, obviously in patients with asthma and all of that, it will be difficulty breathing. Because the classical thing is what's happening is that there's some level of, as the chemicals are released by the immune system to fight the foreign bodies, these chemicals are released in undue proportion that fight the foreign bodies, but they also damage the surrounding tissues. Now, this will manifest as inflammation, which is essentially angry immunologic systems. So in the eye, you would have a reddening of the eye, increased secretions in the eye. Well, basically, it may start with itching and all of that, and then progress to discharge, watery discharge in the eye, increase secretions in the eye. And in the nose, you see patients actually vigorously and violently trying to itch their nose because they have itching. They feel itchy in the nose, and then that leads to a lot of secretion. It goes all the way to the throat, all the way to the ear, because the mucosal lining of the nose, the mouth and the ear are all connected. So that massive secretion of chemicals causes that irritation. In the airway, where of course we have things like asthma, which is unfortunately one of the commonest clinically and public health-wise important allergy, it affects the airway and has led to numerous deaths. In Nigeria, we lose up to 300,000 people may die of poorly treated asthma on a yearly basis. So this causes massive secretions in the airway that causes obstruction. Another common form of allergic manifestation, obviously, is the skin. When the skin comes in contact with these foreign agents or allergens, as they call them, and the immune system would now sense these allergens as low. These are foreign. Let's fight. Let's release chemicals. Let's take them out. And in the process, they cause damage to the person's skin. So you see irritations on the skin, and this is commonly called dermatitis, and colloquially is also called eczema. Another common form of manifestation is when patients who are allergic to certain food substances ingest those food substances, and they go into the intestinal airway, the stomach, the intestine, where they cause irritations, and chemicals cause secretions, massive amounts of fluid, and patients will start vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and so on. So one of the deadliest forms of allergy is what you call an anaphylactic reaction, where a patient is exposed to an allergen, and that causes massive release of chemicals within the vasculature of the patient, and that leads to a complete collapse of the circulatory system. So you have a situation where the patient's blood pressure shuts down. Imagine a blood pressure going from 140/90 to as low as 60/40. That cannot sustain life and is life-threatening, and action must be taken almost immediately. That's the worst form, but most of the others can be taken, addressed on a more less emergent situation.
In your estimation, how many minutes does one need to react in for an anaphylactic situation?
Well, you need to react within 3, 4, 5 minutes, because you need to arrest that process quickly. And in climes where you have very strong health systems, where people have been identified as at risk of anaphylactic reaction, they are provided with certain interventions. You have what you call the immune pen, the flexi pen, where it's basically adrenaline, and patients are actually permitted, are actually encouraged to move around with this FlexiPen because it's a matter of life and death. But in our setting, for example, in situations when this happens, we will need to mobilize these people as fast as possible to the nearest health facility, where by the hope and by effort, hopefully, we would have adrenaline in place, which we can quickly and immediately administer to these patients.
Can this reaction, this life-threatening reaction, be the first reaction to an allergen? What I mean is, the person has not come in contact with this allergen before and comes in contact for the first time. Can it result in this anaphylactic reaction?
100%. In fact, the most people die because it's happening to them the first time. And there are many reasons why. But if you want to look at the key reason, the key reason is a phenomenon we call, immunologically, we call it what you call the molecular mimicry. So what happens is that the person's immune system has identified a certain shape of allergen as foreign. And in identifying that particular shape of allergen as foreign, if the person is now exposed to an allergen, another one that is similar, even in a micro component of it, to this allergen that it has been preset against, it will react in the same way, and you would have a massive anaphylactic reaction.
Wow, that is very serious. But you mentioned something about the skin, and you said eczema
Yes.
is an allergy. Some people say eczema is a disease that can be passed on to someone else. I've heard that several times. They move away from people with eczema, saying, I don't want to catch it. Are there types like that?
Technically speaking, eczema refers to allergic skin reaction, dermatitis. However, it has been used to address and qualify almost anything that is found to be abnormal on the skin, and we really do not blame it. That's why we have you and we have Health Matters to continue to educate the public, so to speak. In essence, what we have is that if you have a reaction in the skin, on the skin, that is as a result of an exposure to an allergen, it would present as allergic dermatitis. Yes, there is a wider term called dermatitis, which would just mean inflammation of the skin. But to a large extent, allergic dermatitis is a major subcomponent of skin inflammation, which is driven by exposure to allergens. So you see some patients would present in the clinic, they have just bought a new watch and they've bought a new necklace or a new earring, or they've just bored a hole in their nostrils and they have a new nose ring there, or they have a leg chain and they notice that along the sides where their body has come in contact with any of these ornaments, they notice some changes in the skin and they are reacting to it. It's been found that cheap ornaments which contain nickel are one of the #1 culprit of dermatitis when it comes to ornamentally related dermatitis. Other forms of dermatitis are skin reactions are things like certain creams which people use. You purchase creams and you don't know where they are obtained from, and they contain certain chemicals and these chemicals are allergens, and your immune system is preset to react to these allergens. Definitely it would manifest as a dermatitis, or in this case, allergic dermatitis, since there is a specific agent, an allergen, a foreign body that your skin is not even supposed to react to, but because of that tendency, you tend to react to it.
Doctor, we're going to talk about exposure because you mentioned it so much, but that will be after the break.
Yeah.
We're going on the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about allergies on Health Matters on Channels Television. You can call 0808-054-2233 if you have any questions on allergies. You can also tweet at CTV_Mary A. This should be showing on your screen now. You can also send an email to me at moalale@channelstv.com while we continue with the program. So, Doctor, we're talking about exposure now. You said something in the beginning of your this conversation. You said if people are not exposed early enough to certain things, they may turn out to be allergic to those things later in life. So what is your advice for exposure of a child from birth? Is there any preset,
Yeah, well, indeed, the thing about exposure, it's in two dimensions. At birth, as you pointed out, and then subsequently in life, obviously exposure has the challenge with exposure is that it leads to it serves as a triggering event. But as the focus is right now in just after birth and around the time of post-delivery, what happens is that it's been shown that in climes where the exposure to environmental allergens, stimulants are less, the chances and the risk of allergy in those populations, the children, is much higher. Like countries like Australia and in the West, where environments are usually very clean, exposure to childhood infections have been completely or reduced significantly by immunization and improvement in hygiene and water and all those things. It means that these children are not exposed early to these allergens in the form of certain kinds of food, in the form of certain kinds of infections, which would have resulted in their immune system being adjusted to those allergens. So what happens is that having not been exposed to those allergens later in life, when they are now exposed to those allergens, these allergens are now perceived as foreign bodies, as threats, and the body reacts to it massively. In fact, there was this hypothesis, which of course still has some merit. It's called the Hygiene hypothesis. And it was said that children who grew up in excessively clean environment were more at risk of developing allergic conditions, mainly because they were playing around in very clean environment and they were not exposed to those infections, and their immunity was not challenged, and their allergic detection system was not downgraded. Because what you want to do usually in the first few months of life is that the immunity is downgraded. Now, there's an interesting phenomenon that happens, is that when you are first giving birth to, your immune system produces all kinds of cells that can recognize every kind of allergen conceivable. When you are exposed to certain allergens, the cell lines, and when your immune system is consistently exposed to certain allergens, the cell lines that are focused on that particular allergens, upon being exposed, undergo what you call it's like suicidal for them. They undergo kind of a remission, and the cell lines are wiped out. So the body is now able to fail to recognize those foreign bodies, those foreign allergens, and is adapted to conceiving them as innate. Now, if that fails to happen, those cell lines, we should have identified some allergens that you are commonly exposed to that you shouldn't react to, that your body should sense as innate, will persist. And a couple of years later, you're exposed to milk, you start reacting. You're exposed to dust mite, you start reacting. You're
okay, Dr. Ibuta,
egg white.
Let me quickly take this call. Sorry to cut in.
Yes.
Let me quickly take this call from Jacob. Hello, Jacob. What's your question? I think we lost Jacob, but let me quickly, yes, but he can try again. He can definitely try again. You mentioned milk. When it comes to food,
yes,
how do you differentiate between an allergy and an intolerance? Or are they the same thing?
Well, an allergy, typically an allergy you will be able to sense you may be able to do certain forms of test which you can detect the allergic organism. So for example, you have a skin test and you have a blood test. Now the skin test allows you to pick certain components of the allergen and you put it on the patient's skin after making little incisions and then come back after a period of time to check whether the body has reacted to it and what kind of reaction and how severe it is. That would help you to more objectively differentiate an irritant from a specific allergen. So just placing an allergen on the skin of an allergic person and placing an irritant on the skin, the allergic reaction are typically characteristic, and an irritant that is irritant to the GI system is not likely to cause the typical allergic reactions we'll see in the skin. So that is also one way. A second way is by picking up the specific immunological chemical, the immunoglobulin E, which is present in the blood, and determine whether the immunoglobulin E collection in this particular patient would react with those certain antigens. But these are typically done in a research setting and not available for clinical practice. What is available for clinical practice is a skin test, which will enable you to determine which allergen the particular patient. And the advantage is that you can actually test up to 20 different allergens. You just place them in different spots on the patient's back, and then after 48 hours or thereabout, you can come and open it up and look. And you would see that there are certain spots out of those 20 spots, maybe 3 spots where you have nickel, where you have some egg albumin and all the rest, or dust mites. The patient has reacted. And that information is critical in managing patient, because you take it back to your patient and say, you're allergic to this, and this is what you should avoid. And if you're exposed to any of them, this is the next step. You need to get some clinical consultation and get some intervention.
Let's quickly take this call from Aaron in Abuja. Hello, Aaron. Looks like we lost Aaron too, but you can keep trying. Can any allergies be cured, treated, and gotten rid of?
Technically speaking, yes. In fact, some allergies would resolve spontaneously on their own, and then some allergies can definitely be cured. The challenge is that the process of curing allergy is not always clinically available, because what you want to do is to gradually expose. Maybe a patient is allergic to a particular food. What you do is that under controlled circumstances, you gradually expose them to tiny bits of that allergen until their body adjusts to that. But that is more theoretical than practical, because commonly in the clinical setting, we don't bother about curing most times. What we want to do is that we want to advise patients to avoid it and educate them well enough that when they develop symptoms upon exposure, these are the steps they need to take.
Okay, Doctor, thank you very, very much. That was such an expose. Thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure, always. Thanks for having me.
Always. And thank you at home, on the way, watching on your phone, on your TV, on your laptop, for tuning in to Health Matters. Have a wonderful day. I am Mary Alale Yusuf.